What is up, players of Fire Emblem? This is Don151 and Mekkah.
Hi.
And we have something special for you today. This is a video containing chapters 11 through 13 of my Fire Emblem 11 H5 and 0% Girls playthrough. We're going to open chapter 11 with a very momentous occasion. This is going to be our first promotion of the game, and our candidate for promotion is obviously Caeda, because we've been talking about it for a while now, and I think she's the only unpromoted unit that we have currently at or above level 10. Promotion normally fixes all of Caeda's problems because it gives her pretty big boosts in her weak stats with her HP, strength, and defense. And normally her speed is very good because she has an 85% speed growth. But here she needs the speed wings because she needs to be able to double a future boss and also survive a certain enemy type later in the game.
So Wendell has finally achieved Pope Dom and wins Bishop. As a result, his dragon is free to use and Jagen gladly takes it up. We've deployed very few units in this chapter because we're going to be doing quite a bit of warp skipping. As you can see, Lena actually warps Wendell towards the village. It's kind of strange to see. Wendell's not armed with Excalibur because he cannot use it. Instead, he just has Thunder. And Wendell seems to be in quite a bit of danger because there's a lot of strong mercenaries nearby that would love to cut him down.
Realistically, there's only one mercenary that's actually within attacking range of Wendell, and the group of four that you see moving right now, one of them sees Minerva looming nearby and decides to go after her, and his other three buddies decide to do so as well, even though none of them can actually attack her. And that sort of creates a clearing in that village area, which allows Lena to warp over Marth relatively safely so that he can visit the village. And he's going to recruit Linda from the village, which is why Wendell did not attack the mercenary, but he healed Minerva instead, because he had the foresight to see that this new recruit is going to have a very, very strong personal, well, almost personal tome that she can use to knock off the remaining HP of that wounded mercenary. So Minerva's current positioning, her previous turn's positioning prevents the four mercenaries from reaching Marth, and then there's that one mercenary at the top of the bottom screen that can no longer reach Marth because of Minerva's blocking.
Caeda and Jagen did a weird maneuver where they moved right and then left. This diverted the Pegasus Knight that attacked Jeorge to the right, and that means Jagen is safe from being attacked by him. Minerva needs to visit this house to talk to Anna. This allows us to recruit Jake, who is standing next to the seizable spot, using Caeda. And the seizable spot is being blocked by a Cavalier, but that one can be blicked by Corleone, used by Jagen, and that actually frees that spot up for Marth to seize after a quick warp.
The Cavalier drops a Javelin, so we can load up Jagen's inventory beforehand with the Warp Staff, and then have it warped over to the Convoy, which allows Wendell to take it out, warp Marth across the entire map, and thereby saving a ton of turns because we wouldn't have to walk across this giant map. So that's chapter 11 completed in 3 turns. Let's move on to chapter 12.
Chapter 12 will not feature any reclassing or any career path changing stories. Instead, we're going to be having this huge selling spree because we're going to be making another really important and really expensive forge. This forge is going to be for our newest recruited character, Jake. He looks a bit different from everyone else, at least in his map sprite. It's because he's a ballistician and he only uses ballista. We've only got one of those, the Arrowspate. It's the only ballista that's effective against flyers. So that alone makes it worth forging, because effective forged weapons are always good. And we're gonna need a bit of might and then a bunch of hit and crit, because Jake's stats in themselves aren't very good. He's only really good at his defense, which is also the most useless thing. But we do need Jake to pull off a couple of cheesy strategies like in this chapter. So that's why we're selling a bunch of stuff. The boss in this chapter, he's defensively very weak, at least when it comes to physical defense, so that's why we can get away with very little might. But we do only 3-hit kill with the Arrowspate, so we need to rig a crit.
The chapter design here enables a sort of cheesy strategy because most chapters, you imagine, are literally very linear in that you start from one end of the map and you end in the very opposite end. Here, the starting and ending points are not very far apart, and we have to travel in sort of a C shape to get to the seize point. So that allows Jake to move in a retrograde fashion and actually kind of like attack the boss from behind, so to speak, as early as turn 2. And that's what enables this very early warp skip seize without using very many warps.
So in the upper left of the chapter is a prison that might remind you of the Paladin chapter from Fire Emblem 6. There's a big difference though. You can't move everyone to safety in this chapter, And in fact, we need to check one of the archer's stats, because if his strength doesn't round down, he one rounds one of the armor knights in there, and that's not good because we want to keep everyone alive. Minerva and Caeda actually move towards the prison to save them. If you beat this chapter in 2 turns and position the prisoners this way, you don't need to do this because they will stay alive. But we want the Thundertone that the mage drops, so we're going to do that anyway.
An alternative to saving the prisoners in a normal casual playthrough is just to let them die, because, to be frank, most of the prisoners are pretty worthless. They're not even as good as the other units that we recruited earlier, such as Iron Lance, Iron Sword, and Steel Sword, because they don't join with any weapons. Of those prisoners, only one of them is really any good, and the other one is needed to recruit a character later in the playthrough. So we killed the enemy thieves, one of which dropped a brand new Warp Staff, and afterwards we're going to be preparing to use the save point to get the critical hit. In skipping this map, we end up ignoring a whole lot of potential treasure, and that treasure could have been useful. For example, we're ignoring 20,000 gold worth of bullion, we're ignoring an arm scroll, and we're ignoring the boots. In this game, because warp is just so strong and there's so many uses of warp available to us, it costs too many turns to get the boots, and the boots are not going to help us save any turns later on. So this is one of those rare occasions in which boots is not useful. That's chapter 12 completed in 2 turns, and we'll be moving on to chapter 13. Chapter 13 is rather distinctive in terms of map design in the context of the entire series, because it's one of the few, if not the only maps in the series that contains almost exclusively enemy ballisticians as an enemy type. And this presents a bit of a challenge for more casual players, because trying to deal with all of the overlapping enemy ranges is somewhat challenging if you're not doing this chapter really fast, like we're about to do it right now. Compounding this fact is the AI patterns of some of the enemy ballisticians are inconsistent. Some of them have no movement, whereas some of them are programmed to move their maximum 4 movement every turn. But we're going to be employing sort of a fast, cheesy strategy here, as is evidenced by our forging of the Levin Sword. Specifically forging plus critical on the Levin Sword, so you can guess that we're going to be using a critical hit. For those of you who are not familiar with the weapon, the Levin Sword is a sword that was popularized in FE13, but it featured actually in FE1. It runs off the user's magic stat, which is sort of problematic for most sword users in this game because they don't have much of a magic stat, and the Levin Sword is not very powerful, but we only need to forge a tiny bit of might, kind of like we did with the Arrowspate in the previous chapter, to reach our desired threshold.
Ballistas come in a lot of different flavors, and they're all featured in some way in this chapter. There's the Arrowspate that Jake has that we already know. Some enemies have it, which is why Caeda has reclassed the paladin, so she doesn't get targeted down by those. There's Beck just joining us with the Thunderbolt Ballista, which has effective damage against other ballistas, which is very convenient. There's Hoistflam, which is like Arrowspate but no fire effectiveness, but a lot more accuracy, which is pretty useful sometimes. Stonehoist is pretty important in this chapter. Marth has to actually dodge one of them, and he can do that because it has like 50 base hit, and he's standing on top of a village, and he's getting a support bonus from Caeda, who's deployed pretty much just for that purpose. And finally there's Pachyderm, which is what the boss is using. Very strong ballista that one-hit kills almost everyone on our team, and that's why we have to use this warp strategy to get around it.
There's one very interesting, I guess, boss strategy here. We deploy Medea because she needs to recruit the enemy hero Astram. And Astram starts in a very convenient place. He starts within attacking range of the boss, and we forge a Levin Sword so that Medea can trade it to him. The boss is kind of a very tough cookie to deal with. He's very defensively strong because ballisticians have a ton of base defense, but he has no resistance, so we just need to get one critical hit with his slightly modified Levin Sword, and then Astram makes him bite the dust. So that is chapter 13, completed in 2 turns. We will see you next time.
See ya.